5:33, call to order. And anybody have any changes to the agenda? That's a no. Public forum. I'd like to welcome our Middlebury College students who are visiting. Do you want to just give us a quick introduction and your name and maybe where you're from and a fun fact if you want.
Awesome. Well, I'm Roy Urbina. I go to Middlebury College. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. And a really cool fun fact about me is I'm part of the ROTC program at UVM.
Oh, I'm Eliza Major. And I'm from Connecticut that just actually allocated ARPA funding for ice cream help. So,
but it's maybe not quite as exciting as the suggestion that some people still had to buy cocaine for that.
My name is Cody. I'm originally from Beijing, China, and I've lived in Seattle for the past 8 years. I guess. Fun fact about me, I don't know. I had a concussion last spring from skiing. I was so old.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're gonna ski again this year?
Yes, for sure. Awesome. Never quit.
My name is Katrina. I'm senior history and political science double major at Middlebury, and I'm from a small town like this. I came out here for more rural communities to feel at home. So super excited to be taking part in this.
Thank you. I didn't know if we might have had some students zooming in. I don't see them, so we'll go with that. Well, thank you and welcome. You're welcome to observe and questions, and Jessica might have questions as we go along as well. I'm Porter Knight. I'm the chair of the committee.
I'm Chris Burley. I'm the co-chair.
That's what I call you.
Yes.
You have a fun fact?
No. Fun about me.
Chris is he has a smoker and he makes amazing smoke meats. My fun fact is I graduated from Middlebury in '89 and never left.
Oh, sure. So I'm Mike Dash. I'm a member of the committee. Teach at Middlebury College.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's it for fun facts.
That's about all. Yeah.
You don't want me to say anything else?
You can say whatever. After the last 6 weeks, I'm just keeping my head above water.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Allison DeVica, part of the member a group of blah blah blah. Oh my gosh, a member of this group, and I do not teach at Middlebury College. So there's my fun fact.
I'm Betsy Blair, live in Bristol, and I have lived in Connecticut and I have lived in Maryland. I enjoyed them both, but Bristol is better.
Thanks for that. Rob, you want to weigh in? Oh, sorry, just taking a drink. That was mean.
Good timing. It was on purpose, I'm sure. So my name's Rob Rooker. I am on this committee, also on the Planning Commission. And fun fact is I don't like doing fun facts and other sharing exercises.
Fair enough. That's you, Helen.
Oh, sorry. I'm Helen Young. I represent the Conservation Commission. And fun fact relevant only to this group, particularly with the students there, is I taught at Middlebury College for 20 years and retired 4 years ago.
Right. Valerie?
I'm Valerie Caples. I'm the town administrator for Bristol. And fun fact is, I've never taught at Middlebury College.
Yay!
Well, Jessica?
I was having a problem with my speaker, so I had to log out and log back in. So I feel like I missed something. We're doing something.
We invited the students to introduce themselves, and then we introduced ourselves, and some of us are sharing fun facts.
Okay. Well, they already know who I am, or they should, but Jessica Teets, and I'm just a community member.
All right. Tasha, welcome. We're glad to see you on the call. Did you just want to listen in today, or did you have something you wanted to share in the public forum?
Hi guys, I would love to share. I'm gonna walk over and be there in a few minutes, but I want to, can I zoom in and listen in while I'm here?
Yeah, you're welcome to. Did you have something specific that you wanted to raise in public forum?
The meeting, right?
She's walking. or
That's
driving
fine.
over.
We'll see you when you get here. It's fine. Walk safe. Okay. Review of the minutes. I hope everybody got a chance to look at those. Any comments, changes, additions?
I,
Oop. Go ahead, Helen, yeah.
in looking at the long list of all of the things we each mentioned as we should consider spending ARPA money on, I forgot to mention, and I feel pretty strongly about Turning Point Center. And I realized no one else had mentioned them either, and I want to make sure they're on some list somewhere.
So I will add to the minutes, Helen, under your list, Turning Point. And then I will add that to our list that has that's got at least one mention.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. I just wanted to, before we move on, check with Chris and Allison, because you guys were each going to see if you'd had an opportunity to talk to either regional planning on your end and the schools on your end.
Yeah. No. Oh, sorry.
Well, that's a no.
That's
so
a no.
That's easy.
No,
Okay.
no.
Have they been responsive? Have they
I
reached out?
haven't even
Okay.
extended the invitation because we wanted to find out what sources of the ideas that were presented could be funded in alternative methods, and I don't believe we still have that information as a group.
Not entirely, although we did send out with the minutes a list that Valerie had put together.
Right.
So it doesn't go past the things that were mentioned by all of us multiple times. I wonder if it'd be worth going ahead and reaching out to them and just see what they're thinking.
Sure.
And find out how big their pot or pots of money are and where they're headed with that.
Sure.
Just so we have a sense of that before we hear from Jessica's group, probably in December.
Right.
So maybe in the next month.
Yes, it won't happen in November.
Okay.
For me.
Okay.
So if anybody else wanted to take that on, but
maybe I'll call you and just see
sure.
who to talk to and just see. I don't really know who to talk to. Jessica, do you know who at the schools would be?
It would be Patrick and Katrina, I
Would it?
believe, and then Mandy maybe for the piece of childcare.
ELP.
But it's just trying to get, I mean, my schedule has just been insane. So like trying to schedule something.
I might do that. And I'm just doing a
Okay.
phone call. I just want to ask them,
Sure.
how big their pot or pots are and what their thoughts are and their time
Yeah,
frame.
absolutely.
And if they are like hoping or dreaming that we're going to come through on something, or if, they have something going on that we should know about.
Perfect.
And I'm guessing they'll probably say what many towns and other groups are saying. It's like, well, we're not really sure. And
Yeah, I mean, I know that they use some of their money to buy bleachers.
that's right.
Cool.
Right.
So, I mean.
Okay. So I'll call the school.
I can help you with that
Patrick
too,
Roberts.
Porter.
Okay, Patrick, Katrina, and Mandy.
I would say, yeah, perfect.
Do you have any luck?
Yeah, so Adam and I chatted 2 weeks ago. I don't know, whenever he was here. It was the night after our last meeting, so whenever that was.
Okay.
They don't have a ton that he could think of where we would allocate monies directly. The closest we thought of was possibly putting together, the planning commission right now is in the middle of working on revamping the zoning regs. And they're running on a grant that may or may not be adequate. And we'd hate to have August come about and all of a sudden there'd be no more money. And that process sort of stop and we have to reapply for more grants and all that. So possibly setting aside a chunk of money for short-term for consultation and then to finish up the project. Anywhere from like 10 to 12 grand probably would be adequate. He didn't dare throw a number at it, but we were just spitballing numbers. So the other one he said possibly look at doing, and there's other funding sources, but for studies on water and wastewater improvements in our community. Wastewater is a big one. And that's about it.
So he mentioned that there is other ARPA money coming for water and wastewater.
Now, there's other sources that we could utilize to study a wastewater opportunities in our community.
Okay.
And so it didn't, nothing jumped on. He said, oh yeah, you ought to spend it right here. Here's a great option. It was like, there's not a lot from a housing planning standpoint. It's tough to come up with something that's going to be, that you'll be able to execute by the deadlines.
And do they have ARPA money coming to them as well?
I don't believe so.
I feel like I keep seeing in the Vermont Business Digest, like every week, there's at least one thing about ARPA money coming here for this, ARPA money going there for that. The most recent one was the one I sent out to everybody, which I'm guessing, Valerie, you were already familiar with.
I did see that, yes. And I plan to zoom in on the webinars for the different sections.
So everybody remembers that email I just sent out. I think it might even have been today or yesterday.
It was
about,
today.
And I don't remember exactly what the name of that grant was. Community Recovery and Revitalization Program. And what I thought was interesting about that was that their money that people can apply for through that program aligns almost exactly with the focus groups that we had set up, which I thought was really fascinating. So housing, childcare, theirs is businesses and nonprofits and municipal. So I thought that was interesting. I'm glad you're going to that, Valerie, and thanks for, letting us know how much money that ends up being and whether that's something that Bristol can take advantage of.
I also forwarded it to Sarah at the Children's Center and to Susan Bowen at the apartment complex on Lovers Lane.
Do we feel like there would be value in sharing that with any of the groups or organizations that came to our focus groups, like Willow Well or the Bristol Family Center?
Yeah. I think
Or
Sarah was with the Bristol Family Center.
that's Sarah,
Okay, yeah.
but Willow Well,
Which is Tasha.
Tasha Cumming.
Could you just add a little more words about the guts of it? Because I am only just now climbing out of this crisis of all of my office equipment having
That's right.
crashed.
Yeah.
So I
Your
haven't
technology.
really learned anything that's come out in the last couple of weeks.
So all I know about it is the email that I sent out. So this Community Recovery and Revitalization Program is handing out money. It doesn't say exactly how much money it is, but
Looks like 40 million.
oh, does it? Okay, you on the
The
webpage?
legislature, yeah, from the webpage, appropriated 40 million from ARPA
Okay.
to go to this.
So, and there's going to be an explanation of guidelines. So on November 8th, there's a recommended meeting for anyone who might want to apply. And then there are individual meetings for the different categories in which you might be able to apply.
Now, the day when they have 40 million, is that Bristol doesn't get all of that?
We don't
So
get any of it.
What, is this federal? How big a pot is
It's
this?
statewide.
Okay.
Yep.
The legislature put this money into this fund for this community development,
Right.
recovery and revitalization.
The Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development is who will be overseeing this.
So we would have to apply for.
So we would be competing with the other
rest of the state.
towns in
Yep.
the state.
Or it would, someone else could apply. It wouldn't have to be us who applied. It could be a childcare applying directly, or we could be helping them apply or
Mhm.
whatever. But it's just another pot of money going to some of the same categories of things that seem interesting. So when we had Valerie and Ian add to that list of possible funding sources, this is a new one that wasn't on there that now is. And so when we look at these categories and then we look at our list, we could say, well, possibly, maybe bus shelters might be a municipal potential project. Maybe the Mason's elevator might be, I don't know.
And would that then be a reason for us not to list it?
Well, it really depends.
Okay.
It depends on their timing and when that might become available, whether they need matching grants for that. So luckily Valerie's going to go to the initial meeting, which is this week, and
Right.
learn a little bit more.
Mhm.
And then she can help us understand that better. as we move forward.
Valerie, is that an open, I apologize, I haven't do it enough yet. Is that open to anyone to sit through that first meeting?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I'm here in town, I might hop on if I have time.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, the sessions are only an hour, so that's good. I say only an hour. An hour can be a long time sometimes.
So yeah.
Great. So I just wanted to have that quick conversation because that's tied into our minutes with what checking with other groups. So, all right. So today's main agenda item is to talk about the disparity that we noticed last time between the big issues of housing and childcare and the actual little project ideas that we got were a whole bunch of other stuff. So talk a little bit about that and to explore whether we as a group want to make a concerted effort to gather ideas from other groups, organizations, or towns to figure out whether there really are meaningful ways that we could allocate our ARPA money to help or contribute to or develop projects that are going to solve these big issues, or if we should say, you know, we don't have a concrete idea and that's not our role, and there is other money for those. Let's acknowledge those are important issues and move on. But I wanted to make sure that as a group that we had that conversation so that we don't just rush to start funding projects or recommending projects to fund without taking a pause, because those concepts were really loud and clear in all of our engagement with the community. So that's what items number 2 and 3 are, is just to explore this, to explore this big idea versus small project concept, and then to you know, decide how we want to proceed if we want to do anything different.
So is that what we're going to discuss right now?
Well, yes, but Tasha just got here.
Hi.
So we were just moving out of the minutes and public forum, but I want to welcome you as the public. And if there's something in particular you want to share with us, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
And you can introduce yourself for the people who don't know you.
I'm Tasha Ball. I'm with the Little Foundation and a Bristol resident. And I'm just getting my head back in the game after maternity leave, and submitted a proposal on behalf of the Little Foundation for the ARPA funding, possibly keeping the Wren's Nest Forest Preschool in Bristol, which is a program that's currently in Bristol, but it would be more sustainable and we would stay longer if we had a long-term home. So, and I had that proposal. It was a written couple page. I don't know if it hit your desk, but sorry.
So you're just wondering, like, where are we?
Yeah, I just wanted to check in, see where you are, and ask if you guys have any questions or you need any other information. Or I was listening on my way and I heard that there may be another pot of money, so just staying engaged and
great.
Yeah.
So I want to address your question, and that also one thing I wanted to mention is this past week I've had 3 inquiries from other people who had either put forward an idea or were just wondering what happened. So I feel like it might be a good time for us to maybe put something on Front Porch Forum, just sort of like, here's where we are and here's our process. So here's where we are and here's our process. So we did the focus groups which you came to. Some people submitted ideas directly with fully thought out proposals. Then we went to a whole bunch of public events over the summer. We had postcards people could fill out. There was an online form. We gathered, you know, I can't remember 100, how many, 100, 500 lines.
There's a lot.
Hundreds of ideas and thoughts that people had. Some were duplicates, some were throwaways, some were well thought out, some were just whatabouts. And we've sorted through those. Jessica helped us with her methodology to sort of group them and categorize them. And we came up with a short list of several dozen that really spoke to the group and met some of our ideals. But we're stepping back from that a little bit right now and planning tonight to have a conversation about housing and childcare and whether there's more we want to do to solicit things in those 2 areas, because we didn't get a ton of really well thought out proposals, yours notwithstanding. So we're going to explore that this month and maybe next before we roll up our sleeves a little bit more and try to parse out what we might recommend. And then the steps after that would be Once we get to the place where we have a shorter list of things that we're starting to feel comfortable or excited about recommending to the select board, then we have talked about maybe applying some ranking criteria within the committee based on some of our previous thoughts, or maybe not doing that. And we've also talked about maybe taking those out to the community and saying, here's what we're looking at funding. Give us your preferences so that we can present to the select board with sort of the, what's really resonating with the community. So that's kind of where we're headed, and we're still on track to give the select board recommendations after town meeting.
Great.
That's kind of where we are. Does anybody want to weigh in on anything I missed with that process or steps we imagine?
You did better than I would, so you did well.
I thank you.
Can I stay for as long as I can?
Oh,
Absolutely, it's an open meeting.
I have to stay.
Yeah, great. That's fine. Great. All right. So first,
And if you need to, either of those offices at any point, feel free to pop in.
so yeah, discussion on the difference between the big issues and the smaller projects. First, just sort of open conversation. Have people thought about that since last week, and where are you leaning?
I am leaning toward the small projects because I think that a number of the people that I met in handing out the postcards and stuff, they want to see something happen. It's not going to just thrill them that we are spending more money on a study. Like that's what they think government is. You spend money on a study. So I think it would be very helpful to have some things that are really concrete. Now, as I mentioned before, I have a very soft spot in my heart for low-cost housing. But I was really concerned about the idea of joining into an effort that is going to build housing in Middlebury or something like that, because in my experience, people living in Bristol go and work in Middlebury, but people who live in Middlebury don't commute to Bristol. And there's not enough workers in any jobs anywhere. So they're gonna pick a job where they don't have to commute. They can just walk to work. So I don't see that that is gonna do anything to help the vibrancy of the Bristol businesses. So in terms of housing, I'm more interested in maybe having some low interest loans for people that want to make accessory apartments. Also, that's small units is better for business in that it's people that are young need inexpensive, not very big places. And so if you're building things for families, it's not going to be helping the businesses as much to have workers. So anyway, that's one thought. And then on childcare, I think that is very important and that does contribute to the economic viability here in town. And so on that one, I was thinking to take up the Willow Well, and I don't know if that's the same as the place that needs the sprinklers.
Nope.
No, so I would be interested in maybe funding both of those. So I have other things too, but that's the ones on those two issues, if that's what you want to hear about. Thank you.
Just one little point of clarity. When we started this discussion a few moments ago, it was small items versus big items, and I don't think that's the right terminology. I think it's big picture versus short-term projects is a better term, because to dump 10 grand into the planning commission for a long-term housing study versus the monies towards Willow Well or to the Masons or even putting AC in this stuff, those are short-term projects. but they're not trying to solve the big picture. So
Right.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarity.
and I'm okay with the 10 grand to that, but I want that to be just a little tack on, because that's not the piece that's gonna get the public all fired up.
No, I agree. I just wanted just more of a point of clarity that
Right.
I
No, and
think that's what we're trying to wrap
I,
our heads around.
I know that those studies are necessary, but I'm just thinking that this is kind of a test of government to the public. And mostly the public is not aware of how much red tape is necessary to get things done. So I just think it's really important, and especially knowing that there are other kinds of monies coming through the pipeline that people will probably never hear about. But that this is one that has high public visibility. And I think that people should hear about projects that they can comprehend.
Right. And I
Absolutely.
think so and there are different continuums. So there's the concrete versus planning money. So that's one continuum.
Right.
There's the multiple projects versus a few larger projects. There's the invest in, concept development versus existing projects. So they're all different.
Right, except your
considerations.
multiple projects, they're the ones that are going to tend to not be built in Bristol.
Oh, we've got the library and the bus shelters and the Mason's elevator. Those are all multiple little projects.
Those
Those
are
are all,
I see.
and
I see. Okay, I thought
nothing
you were-
made our hot list that wasn't in Bristol, not a single
I'm
thing.
sorry, but when you said multiple, I thought you were talking about like a multi-family
no.
building.
No, and we didn't, nothing made our, short list that wasn't in
Right,
Bristol.
right.
Um,
I'm into small is beautiful here.
Yeah, I like the idea of having several projects. Be our focus. Again, I will say childcare is my main one. But then again, I'm like just looking through my list, how I organized it, I do love the idea of fixing that skate park and having a little kid park or a playground there too. And yeah.
I think our the data that we have gathered is useful, probably now that we've gotten ourselves educated about what people want, to be used for advocacy for other programs.
for sure.
And that we should keep track of that as all these other funding things are happening, and maybe get articles into the papers and that sort of thing saying, well, gee, we found that there was really a big need for this, and
Sure.
here's this program, and we think it should be back, or whatever.
Good idea.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So, I sort of raised this issue because I was sort of struggling with this disconnect between so many people concerned about housing and childcare, and so many of our immediate projects feeling a little disconnected from that. And the more I've been thinking about it since raising the issue, the more maybe, dispirited I am in the context of housing, in the sense that from Chris's comments and thinking about the number of houses that are being built relative to the money we have, that feels intractable to me at this stage. But I am actually a little bit, and maybe echoing that's in Allie's comments, a little bit more optimistic that we could make a sizable dent in some of the childcare challenges within the scope of the monies that we have. And that might even fit into a broader plan of multiple projects, with sort of childcare being sort of the headliners in terms of maybe taking up the bulk of, or being slightly bigger of those multiple projects, because it's still not a small problem. And then still presumably leaving some room for some of these really wonderful ideas that we've identified. And maybe I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too a little bit, but it would feel in that sense that we were cognizant of these big issues and did our part to try to address ones that we might be in a position to address, while still giving credit to all these wonderful ideas where we're just, building Bristol across many facets. And that feels comfortable. For me, the challenges with that are really kind of looking into proposals from Willowell or otherwise to kind of get a sense of, like, if we went down that route, what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of new childcare slots that are available?
Like, what's our goal?
What's our goal? Like, and what is it really feasible, right? So even if we expand facilities, do we think that we can hire workers to be able to use those facilities, right? Because these are all obviously interconnected. And so basically, if we were convinced, right, that we could expand existing facilities in a way that they could support in the long run to offer more slots, that feels like we've all of a sudden done something really big in terms of major issues while still preserving flexibility to address other issues.
And to be honest with you, I mean, the two proposals that are out there aren't that expensive.
Not that expensive.
I don't want to minimize them, but
No, I agree.
yeah, but I mean, I was just looking at your proposal. I mean, it's topping out at 200 grand.
Right.
And if we were to help the family center potentially with a sprinkler system, there's 100 grand. I mean, that's only a third of the money, and this is a huge issue we could tackle.
Right.
And then still do a bunch of really good, feel good.
Visible, tangible.
And those two are actually visible.
But we
tangible.
do need to be taking at least the higher figure because the cost of lumber and everything is like skyrocketing.
But we may also be able to leverage those funds with some others, so we may not have to, be exclusive in that. But I think that those are all good points. Allison?
On the list that was generated, it said renovation of Howden Hall.
Mhm.
Like, and who would the people be to be able to talk about that? Because at one point, wasn't it a school? It was a school, correct? There was a school in the basement.
Yeah, sort of. I mean,
Yeah.
so that building's been fully renovated and it's fully functional the way it is. It's really more, to use Howden Hall would be more setting up programming in it. They might need to do some minor tweaks to the building to bring it up to.
But I'm just gonna use this as an example, like Wren's Nest could maybe have like 8 children in that space.
Absolutely. I mean,
And run a program in it right
it's
there.
fully ADA compliant. It's got the
Right.
backyard.
Or
It's
it's
accessible.
fenced.
Yeah. The fence may need to be upgraded. I mean,
Gotcha.
but those are things
Think
that,
of-
yeah, no, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, because
And
then
that's one of the questions that I had was, so when we talk about, okay, what if we, said this is a big issue for us, childcare. What if we contribute, put a portion of it towards that? What is our goal? Is there a number of slots that are needed in Bristol? I've heard that statewide, that there's, X number of shortage of slots. Like, what would be, you have a number for Bristol? Like,
I don't have a number, but I have something to add to that.
okay, so 2 seconds. So, if there was a number and we could say, okay, this is the gap. We need this many additional childcare slots. Can we get those with our existing things? Like, do we put more money there or try to attract more money there? And then one of the things that I thought was sort of compelling. So I'm not sure how many of you had a chance to open the housing affordability eligible ways to use ARPA money, but it was something that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns put forward that Jessica shared with us. And there were some really interesting ideas on that, which related to one of the housing ideas that was on my hot list, was the idea of sort of renovating homes or supporting people to age in place, but making the existing units in Bristol be more appropriate for the people who are house hunting or looking for housing. And two of the ones that really spoke to me was this idea of, down payment assistance to income eligible home buyers. And it goes on, but what I highlighted was, like people who worked in the pandemic, so childcare workers or healthcare workers, nurses. So, we take this, we're like combining two different things. We're saying, okay, maybe we can help people afford a home who have been doing this work on the front lines through the pandemic and are going to continue doing that work, in this community. So it's an interesting thought. And then another similar idea was buy down the price of existing homes for low income home buyers, or again, I thought people who had got us through the pandemic. So I include in that, in addition to childcare and healthcare, retail storefront employees who are a low wage worker, but who, by golly, they went to work every day and we're struggling to keep those shops open and the gas station running, that sort of thing.
I have a question on, when you're saying, okay, we will prioritize such and such people. On the childcare slots, can we prioritize that they are people that live in Bristol?
That's what I just wanted to say.
Because I know
That's
people
actually
are
Tasha
willing
said
to
that's what she was
drive a long way to get
Yeah.
transportation.
Absolutely. We have to collaborate and write that proposal together and say, okay, if we get this ARPA funding, we promise that 5 out of our 15 slots are Bristol residents who need it every year. We'll prioritize Bristol residents, or we've been running really successful summer camps. We'll offer more summer programming, or we'll prioritize low income. Like it'll help us. We're happy to work together, and so it's not, Bristol's ARPA money being spent for a preschool spot for somebody in Middlebury.
It's on their way to Middlebury, yeah.
I just texted somebody who was at our spaghetti dinner, who on the chart paper was talking about childcare. And the recent figures for Addison County, and she's gonna double check tomorrow, is that 460 spots were needed from birth to kindergarten age.
So do we think
So
that's
that's the gap.
125?
So
in
she said
Bristol,
that
or-
she will find when she gets back to the office, like tomorrow, that she'll get the number for Bristol.
Yeah, I'll bet that probably means about 100.
The truth is, and this doesn't bode for my proposal, is that the biggest gap is birth. There's nothing for birth. And that's a systemic problem. That's a
Right,
bigger
I mean,
conversation for another day, because it's about.
that same problem was here 22 years ago when my daughter was born.
Yeah.
I mean, I got laid off when my daughter was under
So
2 years
timely.
old,
Fun fact.
and I spent the summer dropping my kid off at daycare and without a job, because while my wife was working, because we couldn't afford to give up the slot in Chittenden County.
Right.
So I was a stay-at-home dad with my daughter at daycare was the joke, but that was the reality of it.
I want to make sure we hear from Helen and Rob too, if you're having thoughts there, but I'm perfectly happy to sort of go back and forth between items 2 and 3 on the agenda. Because item 3 is about, do we want to gather ideas from different groups and things? And I think that, if we're starting to lean in the direction of saying, let's prioritize a chunk for childcare and maybe housing, and then have the other chunk be for some tangible, good projects that are lasting in the community. Maybe we want to reach out to Let's Grow Kids and say, like, if we have feedback that we have, say, 100 needed slots in Bristol and 50 of those are birth through 3, like, what's possible? And see if they have ideas or if they're working on something already.
To me, that's more of a rabbit hole than this group
Yeah.
is really designed to go down.
Yeah.
To a degree. I mean, gathering the data and coming up with concepts and looking at proposals that were brought to us, I'm good with that, but bringing in more and more people, I mean, this thing's just gonna snowball to the point where we'll end up with, I don't think we'll be able to get our heads around where we're really trying to
And
go.
then we have to get them to come and be at the table and have us explain to them how it was we arrived at this, because they won't have the background that we do. And I think that's a waste of time. We have already reached out to the public, and we're working with their stuff.
But in the interest of transparency, what if we reach out to Let's Grow Kids and they say, we have 6 people in the Bristol area who've recently contacted us about wanting to start a thing. And if they have, I feel like I don't want to operate in a vacuum, and without saying we need to create it, to just have a conversation and see who's already thinking
It's
this.
a quick email to somebody. Like, I would
So-
be happy to send a note to Darla to ask, like,
Okay.
do you have the numbers? Like, going along with the 460 for Madison County, what
Then-
you've heard
right.
about birth to 3,
Okay.
can you give us just a quick, like, idea of a number, like, even if it's just like an educated guess of what
Right.
it is, and then happy
Data
with
I'm
that.
good with.
Then
That's-
happy with that. I see what you're saying about inviting more people to the table, because then it opens up and perhaps becomes Pandora's box. I don't know. But I'm going to send her a text right now to give me those numbers.
Okay.
Thank
Rob?
Yeah, I was just going to say clarification is fine, but at this point, with the timeline that we have left, we do not have the time to go down any more holes or start chasing other things, starting fresh, because there's just not the time. We don't have anything developed to that point yet. We have the holidays coming up. We have basically one meeting, and then it's December, and then it's New Year's. And then it's town meeting day. So, it's going to go faster than we expect. And I don't know if everybody's going to want to do 2 meetings a month through the holidays. So that's my cautionary thing with that. And
That's great. And actually, I think This is exactly the conversation that I wanted to have, because I didn't want us to move into the winter and have anybody on the committee feeling like we had left stones unturned, that we got this massive edict about childcare and housing, and then we went in a different direction. So I just want to make sure that, and it sounds like people are feeling good about the direction we're going, not feeling like we need to do a lot of additional outreach. Just maybe, get some numbers and keep in touch with different organizations, things. That's great. Valerie?
Part of the process, at least early on, was to, when we got to this point, or to a point of having a package of recommendations, that we were going to go out to the public and present that to the public and get feedback. So I wonder if that is the time that we get what you're talking about.
Well, I think when we go to the public, two thoughts I have. The first is, I don't want to be seeking ideas at that point. That going to the public is just to sort of say, like, we got 500 ideas. We distilled it down to 24 that met a certain set of criteria. We've distilled that down to 10, a dozen, whatever, that fall into these categories. This is what we're going to recommend to the select board. What are your favorites? What do you feel most strongly about? So that they're basically ranking the things that we think we have pretty much enough money for the select board to fund. But then when we send our list to the select board, it will have the community who chose to weigh in's ranking of it. So I don't want it to be a popularity contest because of just letting them pick from, if we give them 20 things and we can only afford 10, I don't want to go that way. I want the committee to say, here's the ones we want the select board to fund, but then the community can weigh in on the ones they feel most strongly about, so that if, as Betsy said, costs exceed, so that if the select board has to make tough choices, that they know, where their priorities would be if they're responding to the community feedback. But I don't want to be quite so democratic, if you will, as to have the community actually pick from a set of 20. I think that's just going to be confusing. And I definitely don't want at that point to be actively inviting new ideas. Does that explain?
Where are we in that process of distilling down compared to certain criteria and then ranking, or what the process you described?
We've pushed the pause button is where we are. So what we did was, at the last meeting, we had our list of things that got mentioned more than once by our group. That's what came out of the last meeting. And then you and Ian helped put some possible funding sources on that. And now we're stepping away from that to just reassure ourselves that we're feeling good about moving forward with the ideas that we have, rather than feeling like we need a directive, or have a directive or a mandate to gather more information about childcare and housing and develop more ideas on those big ideas, or more projects on those big ideas. So that's where we are this month, is a little pause on the winnowing down or funneling down of the ideas, just so that we can have this exact conversation and be like, do we feel okay about not gathering more information, not having received a lot of really in-depth housing solutions? Are we okay with that? So that's kind of where we are.
Thank you.
So everybody needs to be prepared that there will be stones left unturned, and there will be other options that are not explored, because we don't have the time or the resources to chase everything out. And if we wait long enough, the town's going to just have to, by default, designate the money and use it how they want, because we will not have time to put forth any real recommendations.
And as Chris said, pointing out that, it's really not within our capacity or purview as a committee to actively develop those ideas. If they didn't come into us and we're not aware of them in the, out there in the eco atmosphere, then we have what we have.
And some of them, I'll just use the skate park. We have no idea what the total dollars, what the concept is. That one I wouldn't be opposed to, whether it's our group working to find some of that data and gather data, but not more concepts. I think that's the one I'm more afraid of. I don't want to lump any more concepts on. I'm already full.
Right, and I think in the skate park, like, they have their ideas about what they want to happen, right? They want to rebuild everything out of the wood, right? Because maybe I'm wrong on this, but they don't want concrete because it has to be moved.
Exactly,
So there's like
yeah.
little things like that. So then it's like, what would that cost?
Yeah.
Who's that? And I know that there was a committee.
Yeah,
That
and
was-
but again, I threw in the idea of adding another chunk to it, so
Yeah.
let's have them add some more. So again, I would, if we wanted to reach out to a group, like the rec department and say, hey, here's what our idea was. Can you all do the legwork and come up with a ballpark dollar? We're not looking for down to the penny, but give us is this a $40,000 project? Is this a $200,000 project? Because we can only do so many $200,000 projects, but we do a lot of 40,000. So, but I don't want there to be like 4 different groups in here giving us different skate park designs and different methodologies, and my head will explode.
I don't want to see that. Okay, so yeah, that's gather more data. That can be December.
And we're at 6:19, just to let you know, because I know we have to wrap
That's
up.
I was
great.
gonna say,
No, I think we're good.
So I have a question or comment about the all of the I realize the column title is possible alternate funding for our list of suggestions. So for instance, I think electric charging stations would be a great use of ARPA funding, but apparently there's money available for doing that. Do we develop a second list of things we have heard the public want, we as a committee think should be high priority, but we recognize there is other funding? Here are things that we have not seen other funding for, so that if electric charging stations aren't on our final list, it's not because we didn't think they weren't important, it's because there's other money. Why should we spend ARPA money on something that some other organization will pay for? So I would hope that
yeah, Helen, that's great. And one of the questions I have with all of these grants is like, well, there's grants available. Like, so for example, like the library and the dog park, it said the VORAC Community Grant Program. Well, Bristol's applied for that 3 years running and never got it. Does that mean like, so what are our chances of getting it again? So yeah, there's money out there that might possibly fund something like that, but we've applied for that money before and not gotten it. Like, what do we think our chances are? So like, I don't know how much work that is. And that maybe that's something that Valerie and Ian and I can do in a meeting, in a conversation, is to look at them and say, what do we think our chances are? Like how big is the pot of money? Like the AARP grants, I've applied for those before too, never got them.
right.
So, how big is the pot of money? What are our chances of getting that money? If we do get the money, is there, matching grants that would be required? I think that that's all important information. So just like you said, Helen, the fact that there's money available for this, well, would we get it? And if we didn't get it, that, that's pretty high on our list with a lot of people feeling strongly we should do that. But if we get the money, then cool, we'd want to use that money elsewhere.
And is that part of the select board's process or responsibility, is that they will take the list that we give them and seek out other funding to support some of the things that they know there might be pools of money, and therefore it would allow ARPA funding to be spent on the things that no one has suggested there's alternative sources. I mean, I'm wondering if this is our job to figure out, can we get this grant? If we get this grant, how much is it going to be? As Rob said, we only have
I don't think we can. Yeah, I don't think we can do that. I think that we can ask, we can ask Valerie to help us understand the likelihood of some of these, but it's an unknown thing. And so, yeah, I think you're right, Helen. I think ultimately we might end up giving them a list that says, these are what we want you to fund. But we prefer you seek other funding. I'm sure if Ian were here, he'd say, well, if you fund the grant position, then we'll have a dedicated person working on that, and that might increase our likelihood. So that's something we can consider. But yeah.
Right. So I'm wondering if we could put some of the little things together conceptually and say, okay, we'll make a cute little structure on the edge of the green, and one side will be open for the porta potties, and the other side will be a shelter for the bus, and it'll be right near the place that will work for an EV charger. Now, you know, like most of those things may have other funding that goes into it, but we could maybe, you know, think up the concept, and then somebody could say, okay, how big a foundation do you need? And you don't end up doing like 3 little things all along, you know.
Yeah, and we can offer those suggestions to the select board, and it may all ultimately pan out
And
based
maybe,
on
maybe
contracting.
all
or
of
whatever.
those, maybe all of those things will have their own
Funding.
sources of funding, but that we need to say, okay, these are things that would make the public happy and that would, you know, help with the businesses and, you know, that kind of thing.
And I think that as a committee, we'll have to be careful that understand that once we give our recommendations to the select board, that it may not look exactly like what we thought it was going to be. Maybe they will group those together and that'll make sense. Maybe they won't because it didn't make sense or there was other pressures. So yeah, there's a certain amount of hands-offness that we'll end up having once we, you know, once we pass it over.
And a lot of these grants that are out there require matching funds.
Right.
So that may be where the select board could take that route would be if they, I'm just looking at the skate park upgrade where they have building and general services grant. That's great, but if there's a 25% match, that's where I would hope they would.
Yes.
I would hope that the select board would go down that path anyways to look at other funding and then utilize the ARPA money to offset whatever's short. That would be the logical approach to the grant. I use this information as sort of for my own personal head of, okay, there's a bunch of stuff out there, but like you said, I know a lot of these grants. I'm like, yeah, that's cute that it's on the list, but that's
Never got that before. Right?
Yeah, we'll never see these. I've been doing this a long time and now we've never seen these.
When I look at it, I see where there's gaps, where there's no possible
Yes.
funding, and I'm like, that's where we put our money.
Yeah.
That's just for me, when I look at that.
Right. And I don't necessarily feel that strongly. I see the gaps and I say, yeah, like the upgrade PA for the 4th of July, there's probably no other funding, although you might be able to argue that for several of these. But I think that, yeah, we could fund that. It's not really big, but I would think that the EV charging and the bus shelters are more important and more pressing. So I would put those at the top of the list. And if there wasn't, if the funding didn't come through, or if we needed matching funds and then we ran out of money before we got to that other one, I'd say, you know, anyway,
Yeah.
so, but we can, I think,
Yeah.
this is good. I think that this is where I was hoping to get today. So the takeaways from this would be, you know, I will, Valerie, if it's all right, try to find a time in the next month to sit down together and just try to identify, you know, likelihood amount and need for match for these, just so, you know, we have a little bit of a sense of it. And I know, Chris, you have experience with some of these grants as well. We can gather some data, but we're not going to look for new ideas or develop a proposal ourselves, just identify some
On the
information.
list and getting the data from our items on the list. If that was
Well,
necessary.
yeah, I don't know if I'm quite ready to ask the people who submitted these
Oh,
ideas.
it's not the people, our list that we generated, how we have it listed. Like, right, like that, those are the pieces that we agreed to, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. So if you look at that, like childcare, that's why we're gonna reach out to Darla and the WIC
Right.
people. That's why you were gonna talk to the
Addison County Community.
right. So we're not bringing it more people to the table. We're just
Right.
using this as a document to see if we can gather data from this document that we have created from.
Just add.
To
Just
provide
add a little bit.
clarity in
Right.
reality, if you want to,
Right.
in my mind, it's more reality, is like a dog park. But maybe it's a $10,000 investment, maybe it's $100,000
Right.
for whatever the hell we need to do,
Yeah.
who knows?
Well, I don't think we're gonna get that data in the
Right.
next month.
No, but
I'm not even gonna try. I'm just gonna say for the few things that we've already identified, just go ahead and do that.
When we're looking at, you know, what's the big picture that we want to cover, I think we should also look at the big picture of the demographic groups that are going to benefit. And
Okay.
so I would like to not lose track of the elevator at the Masonic Lodge, which I gather has to do with getting elderly to the meals program. So that, you know, and that's probably pretty small change compared to a lot of these other things. So I think there should be some things for all the different groups. And I think, you know, you got your EV chargers, you're hitting a bunch of different groups.
Okay.
Because that's what my goal is when we're all done with this list, that I can walk away and say, overall, we touched as many people's lives as we possibly could with this money. Whether it's the new parent to the retiree and everybody in between, the kid on the state park, all that. I want to leave here with that, knowing that we did. That's what we set out.
Right.
Not, this was a pet project I really got behind. That's not it.
So for clarification, are we focusing just on this part of the sheet where we got the possible alternate funding information for, or also all the ideas that were mentioned?
So right now, we're not really doing any of that. Really, today, our goal was to talk about this disparity between big issues and get ourselves comfortable with saying we're okay with just moving with what we have and not trying to create something new. So while we're talking about the list a little bit, we're not really doing any narrowing of the list. So yeah, then I think the next question will be when we get to another layer of granularity, you know, we could just walk away with this list. And
well, that's what my question was. Did we already narrow it by not getting the possible alternate funding information for the rest of the list?
No, we didn't do the rest of the list for two reasons. One is we probably would already run out of money with this, just the ones on the first page.
Okay, so everything else has not been by not being a popularity contest. So I was wondering why it was narrowed down at this point.
So the only thing that we have in front of us is the first list is the ones that got mentioned more than once at our meeting. Each person went, and those have some things. The next list doesn't. I would like to see alternate forms of funding for those. I'm curious. I'm interested. But you know, we asked for a quick turnaround, and you know, so our
that was my question, to make sure that stuff wasn't being left behind, because things like, you know, the internet and Wi-Fi, that's one of the limiting factors for development of the town in areas. And so that things like that, if there's no possible funding, but there's something that we can do, you know, that's just kind of making sure we don't overlook anything that we have in front of us.
Let's see if we can flesh that out also before the next meeting.
And some of these, after our meeting last time, were things that people brought up, and I looked down through this mentioned once list, and I'm like, I could get behind that. No, seriously, because when I made my first list, I just went to the list and grabbed, like, emotionally, like what popped out at me, and I didn't really think through. If it didn't jump at me, I was like, yeah, I'll move on. So some of these, I could throw some more support behind in spots.
So maybe we should do that for our next meeting, is talk about, at least briefly, the second set of recommendations that were mentioned only once on the list. Just look through those and see if there now is a groundswell of support for any of those.
Terrific. Let's put that on the make that our plan. And actually, now that you mention it, I see that Turning Point did get put on. Yeah,
I saw that. Yeah.
So let's I will put that on the agenda item for December to see if I can add potential funding sources to this page. I
would wait.
Wait until we see what people are supporting.
Because if it was for the bike fleet and nobody really gets behind it and you do the work, let's not waste your time.
Right.
Let's flesh this out a little more.
Okay.
And then we can chase down what we think should have some more focus.
It's going to be a round 2 of committee members saying on page 2, there are things I would love to see moved to page 1.
Okay.
Yeah. That's our first thing. And then our second thing will be to hear from any data. You know, we'll just do like a little round table, like we kind of did that today. It just wasn't on the agenda of ideas or data.
And then that means we need to figure out a focus down onto some of these ideas, and whether it's putting
Exactly.
small groups to do homework after the fact,
Okay.
whether our. I was gonna say, we.
Oh, right, because Jessica will be hearing from your group at our December meeting too, right? Research that they're doing? Okay, so that's gonna be our December meeting also,
Yeah, we may
is-
punch you guys some homework.
re,
That group.
report.
Hey, Chris, do you have another copy of this list that we're supposed to work from?
I can print it here in just a
That'd
moment.
be great.
So yeah, what I had on our December agenda was, these things. And then also, do we want to, play a game with the things that are on our top list where we experiment with applying ranking to it in our own preferences? So ranking of our committee principles. So the committee principles, which are sort of working one is serving the broadest number of residents or the neediest residents, or investing in something that will have a long lasting effect, not something that is just a one and done ephemeral expense. Something that's not already in the budget and doesn't have another source of funds, something that might leverage or attract additional money to Bristol. So those were the three sort of things that we've been talking about. And I will say too, that of the people who write to me, because I do get ARPA mail, and people reference, somebody said, I never wrote anything on a postcard, but I just wanted to tell you, I hope you're not going to spend that to something that we'll never see again. I say thank you for that. Anyway, I get that type of mail.
Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
So,
Sorry.
anyway, so that's our December,
And what day is that again?
December 5th.
Thank you.
first Monday, regular time.
Regular.
Is that okay, Valerie? December 5th, there won't be a select board meeting?
7 to 8:30.
7 p.m.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Nope, it's not a select board meeting.
So,
Okay.
so yes, so now we've done, that was item number 4, process and next steps for moving ahead. So we have a plan for December. Anything else?
Yeah, I think that's great.
I move the meeting be adjourned 5 minutes late.
I know, we're actually 5 minutes early. Okay.
Order for could I ask a question about the notes that I'm taking for the meeting?
Yes.
So did you want people to try to narrow down their ideas and rank order them before the meeting, or narrow down their ideas and then in the meeting try to order them using the criteria?
You guys, do you want to have a survey tool that you can use to rank all the ideas on these criteria? We can do that. That's pretty easy to set up. So then you would have 2 homework tasks.
Yeah.
One would be to look at list number 2,
Yeah.
and for anything that you feel should be on page 1, make a note. And then the second task would be, we'll have all of the ideas in a little survey, and we'll have the categories that I mentioned from our committee criteria, and you'll say on a scale of whatever, I don't know, Jessica, like 1 to 5, I
1 to
think that
5.
this, yeah, I think that this would be a 5, or I think this is a 0. I know it said 1 to 5, but anyway. So she'll help me work that out. But we can give you a little game to play.
I think that would be good to have that and bring that. So that's like one last step that we have to like
Yeah,
push
and
along.
that might be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk, Jessica.
Okay, and you wouldn't be locked into that. It would just be like a
Exactly.
tool to help you see like where things are falling.
Yes, it's a little game to play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't have to make any notes about
Yeah.
why we're feeling that. We're just.
So I know Betsy's made a motion to adjourn, but anything else?
Do we have a
on-
do we have a timeline on when we are putting stuff out to the public? Like, because that's going to take a month to get together and get out.
Well, I don't know that it would take a month, because so the little game that we're going to play, this ranking exercise, will be similar to the game that we would put out to the public. So what we would do when we get to that point is we would have a survey, and we would simply publicize that and say, click here, and then it'd be on our website. And then, so I think that from the time we put it out to the time we get it all back is, certainly between 2 meetings.
Which
I don't
are a
think-
month apart at this point.
Right, which is, I think, fine. So what I have tentatively right now is December, we have our agenda set. January, we would narrow it further. February, we would go to the public and invite ranking. March, we would be ready to propose it to the select board. The idea, again, being that we're not asking the public to make the decisions for what's being recommended in select board. We're going to the public with the recommendations we want to give the select board and asking them to weigh in on the ones that speak most volubly to them, so that as the select board makes their decisions, they know where their priorities are, and they know that if they run out of money, they should start at the top of that list.
We may find that we focused on X and the town really wanted us to focus on Z.
Yeah,
And that's really all we're gonna get out of that, which is what we want.
right,
Because
right.
this type of, sometimes we can get a little tunnel vision.
Right, but we're not going to go to the public with ideas that we're not behind.
Correct.
And we're not going to go to the public with more ideas, like vastly more ideas than can be funded.
No, like it doesn't.
Something like that. Does that answer your question, Rob? So I think that since we told the select board we wanted to make a recommendation after town meeting, I think that we're going to be okay. I don't think we'll be doubling up meetings in January or February. I think that one meeting a month, we're probably all right.
As long as it doesn't snow.
Well, so we can Zoom. So the only thing I want to say is this sheet that the VLCT sent out. I really feel like a lot of these other ways to make homes more affordable are super important. I know that the Planning Commission's been talking about this stuff, but I just want to make sure we all look at that, because I think these are not things that necessarily require ARPA money. But that, as Betsy was alluding to, we may want to advocate within our community for some of these things because we've heard how important those issues are. And I know the Planning Commission's working on that, but I don't think it would hurt for them to hear from us along the way. So that might be, so I think one of the things that we'll do in maybe March and April.
That's what I was gonna say, post recommendation.
Exactly. To the select board is to come together and say, how do we want to make sure these other really important ideas don't get lost in the shuffle?
Exactly.
Porter, can you resend that sheet? I don't think I have it handy.
Yeah, I'll make sure it goes out with the minutes.
Perfect.
Super.
Resend the VLCT housing thing. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool beans.
Awesome.
We're adjourned, I think.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. See you next month.